When I arrived at my sister's engagement party, I was met with an icy glare that instantly set the tone for the night. Sheila stopped me right at the door, her lips curled in that smug smirk I knew all too well. Instead of greeting me or even offering a polite smile, she thrust a tray of drinks into my hands. "Make yourself useful," she hissed. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. I swallowed my indignation and nodded, deciding I wasn't about to cause a scene at her big event. Little did I know, the night was destined to spiral into chaos. Sheila's party was meticulously organized, of course, as everything about her life had to exude perfection. Twinkling fairy lights bathed the room in a soft glow, and the hum of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Yet, amidst the glamour and charm, my heart burned with resentment. I was here to celebrate her, the sister who had made my life miserable, and now I was playing the role of an unpaid waitress. But it wasn't just the indignity of serving drinks that stung. It was the constant, gnawing reminder of everything that had led us to this moment. Sheila and I had always been opposites, her the golden child in everyone's eyes but mine, and me, the shadow cast in her spotlight. From the time I was born, Sheila had gone out of her way to make me feel like I didn't belong. My earliest memories were riddled with her attempts to alienate me, to push me out of the family fold. As a child, I used to think it was my fault, that I simply wasn't lovable enough for her. But as I grew older, I realized her hatred wasn't about me. It was about her insecurities, her fear of losing the attention she craved like oxygen. The night dragged on, each passing moment grating on my nerves. I moved through the crowd, plastering a fake smile on my face as I offered drinks to guests who barely acknowledged me. Sheila, meanwhile, basked in the attention, laughing and glowing in her sparkling gown. She was the picture of a perfect bride-to-be, but I knew better. Behind that polished exterior was a woman who thrived on control and manipulation. The moment everything unraveled was almost cinematic. I didn't plan it, but fate has a way of intervening when the truth is begging to be revealed. I was walking past a group of Sheila's closest friends when I overheard snippets of their conversation. They were talking about her fiancé, praising his charm, his success, his devotion to Sheila. And then one of them mentioned something that made me freeze in my tracks. "It's amazing how he didn't even bat an eye when she told him," one of them said, her voice dripping with admiration. "Told him what?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. The group turned to me, startled by my intrusion. "Oh, just how she turned her life around," one of them said with a nervous laugh, clearly trying to downplay it. But the damage was done. My curiosity was piqued, and I couldn't let it go. I pressed them for details, but they quickly dispersed, leaving me with more questions than answers. The rest of the evening was a blur of tension and unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something Sheila was hiding, something big. And as the night wore on, I became more determined to uncover the truth. By the time the party ended, I had pieced together enough to confront her. When I finally did, her reaction confirmed my suspicions. Her face went pale, her composure shattered, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Sheila's absence from home for over 5 months had been a quiet weight on our family, especially for Mom. When my celebration rolled around, Mom insisted Sheila attend. Despite her grudges, Sheila reluctantly agreed, showing up just a few days prior, her demeanor cold and indifferent. She didn't congratulate me, not once, even as I greeted her politely. On the big day, the house buzzed with joy, grandparents, relatives, and friends filled the rooms with laughter and gifts. But amidst the happiness, Sheila stood out, her drinking catching everyone's eye. Glass after glass of wine disappeared in her hands, her pace unrelenting. Dad noticed first, his face tight with concern. He gently intervened, urging her to eat something instead of reaching for another drink. But Sheila, her temper flaring, snatched the glass back, continuing to sip defiantly. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. Later, as our grandfather clinked his glass to deliver a toast, the room quieted. His words began with warmth, pride radiating as he praised both Sheila and me for pursuing paths that made us happy. His congratulatory tone turned specifically toward me, acknowledging my scholarship and sharing his excitement about visiting me in college. His words sparked smiles across the room, but then, Sheila's laughter pierced the air. It wasn't a cheerful laugh. It was sharp, sarcastic, cutting through the warm atmosphere. She started giggling, her voice rising. Then, loud enough for all to hear, she scoffed at Grandpa, claiming that no one could possibly believe his pride extended to us both. Her bitterness spilled over. She accused everyone of being there solely for the golden child. I could feel my cheeks flush, humiliation creeping over me as her words echoed. All eyes turned toward her, stunned. Deep down, I knew her accusations were unfounded. Our parents had always treated us equally, never playing favorites. In fact, Mom had always been closer to Sheila, given she was the eldest. But Sheila's resentment was palpable, her bitterness painting me as the villain simply because I'd worked hard for my scholarship. Tears welled in my eyes as Sheila's tirade continued. She complained about the gifts, the support I'd received, and accused our parents of failing to support her travels or her finances. She even lashed out at Dad, blaming him for not sending her money anymore. By then, Dad's patience had worn thin. He stood up, clearly ready to put an end to her spectacle. But before he could intervene, Grandpa spoke again, this time his voice firm and sharp, unlike his usual gentle tone. He reminded Sheila of the sacrifices our parents had made, how they'd worked tirelessly during their college years to raise her. He pointed out that if they hadn't wanted her, they'd had other options. His words cut through the tension, leaving Sheila visibly shaken. He told her plainly that her jealousy was a reflection of her own struggles, not anyone else's actions. Tears filled her eyes as she retreated from the party, leaving the room in stunned silence. Mom followed her, no doubt trying to comfort her, but the damage was done. The celebration, though it resumed, felt quieter. Later, our parents encouraged Sheila to talk, to apologize, but she never did. I soon moved into my college dorm, diving into a new chapter. Back home, Sheila remained with our parents, drifting aimlessly with no plans or ambition. She spent her nights drinking and partying, her days filled with nothingness. Dad tried to help, crafting a resume for her and encouraging her to find a part-time job, but her effort was half-hearted. When she did apply, interviews were rare. Hundreds of miles away, I was mostly in the dark about her day-to-day life. All I knew was that my parents were worried. Then one night, my phone buzzed urgently, my parents' voices frantic on the line. Sheila had been in a car crash. My heart sank. At first, I thought my parents had been hurt, but they assured me they were fine. Sheila had been drinking and driving. She'd hit a fence, and while no one was injured, the aftermath was messy. She wasn't arrested, but Dad had to cover the damages out of pocket. Insurance refused to help, given her intoxicated state. Dad's frustration boiled over. He'd had enough. When Sheila tried to justify her actions, claiming she hadn't hurt anyone, Dad's resolve hardened. He gave her an ultimatum: start therapy, find a job, and work toward stability while living under their roof, or leave. Sheila retaliated, accusing him of trying to control her life while never controlling mine. She dredged up old accusations of favoritism, but Dad wasn't swayed. He stuck to his decision, and as soon as she was discharged, she was out. Sheila tried reaching out to relatives, hoping someone would take her in. But everyone knew about her recent troubles and refused to shoulder the responsibility. Then, to my surprise, she called me. For money? I had a small stash, a few thousand I'd saved from working part-time during high school. Despite everything she'd put me through, I couldn't stomach the idea of my sister bouncing from one couch to another. So, I did what felt right at the time. I transferred the money. All of it. I told myself this was a chance. Maybe, just maybe, it could help her turn her life around. Maybe it could fix the broken bridge between us. But then, I saw her Snapchat. Parties, drinks, the neon glow of bar signs flashing behind her carefree grin. My stomach sank. I texted her, trying to have an adult conversation. A civil one. She responded by blocking me. That was it. The final straw. She'd used me again, and I was done. If she wanted to spiral into immaturity, I wasn't going to stand in her way anymore. She didn't stop there. Whenever desperation struck, she'd call our parents for money. But even Mom, the most patient of us all, had reached her limit. She stopped answering. We all knew what the money would really go toward. For 3 years, she drifted further and further away. Our parents missed her terribly. But deep down, they held on to a flicker of hope that she might pull herself together someday. Then, during my 4th year of college, out of the blue, she called me. Her name lit up my screen, and I hesitated. Was this another ploy? Another mess I'd have to clean up? Against my better judgment, I answered, just in case. To my surprise, her voice was bright, excited even. She asked how I was, what I'd been up to, as if no time had passed. Her tone was maddening, so casual, so oblivious to the damage she'd left behind. I brought up how she'd blocked me, hoping for some accountability. She brushed it off with an air of dismissal, claiming she'd forgiven me for my supposed mistakes. Forgiven me? For what? Before I could ask, she changed the subject, diving into a story about meeting someone. He's the dreamiest guy I've ever met, she gushed. Her voice was full of excitement, painting a picture of this man I'd never met. She wanted me to come home for dinner, for a proper introduction. I hesitated, knowing her patterns all too well. I'll think about it, I said, trying to keep some distance. But she wouldn't take no for an answer. She insisted, telling me how much it would mean to her, how it wouldn't feel like a real family reunion without me. She must have called our parents too because they were just as surprised by her sudden happiness as I was. Curiosity won out. After talking it over with Mom and Dad, I boarded an overnight bus home. That weekend, we gathered for lunch. Sheila introduced us to her new boyfriend, Jack. They looked good together, happy, even. She told us about her job at a marketing firm, her steady income, and how the two had met at work. As the meal went on, Jack spoke up, showering Sheila with praise. "She's so smart," he said, his eyes lighting up. "I mean, a Berkeley graduate? I'm lucky to have someone so accomplished." My heart skipped a beat. Berkeley? Sheila? The words didn't add up. Jack continued, sharing how she'd told him stories of her college days, her professors, her classmates. He even joked about wanting their future kids to inherit her intelligence. We exchanged awkward glances across the table. None of us said a word, but it was clear Sheila had lied. She avoided our eyes, steering the conversation elsewhere. The rest of the lunch passed uneventfully, but something lingered in the air, something unspoken. When it was over, Sheila left abruptly, dragging Jack along without so much as a goodbye. Back home, we pieced it all together. She'd fabricated an entire life, one she knew Jack would admire. Later, she called us, begging us not to say anything. Dad, unable to let it slide, pushed for answers. That's when she admitted it. She'd forged her college documents to land her job. She'd also hidden other parts of her past, her drinking, the car accident, all because she didn't want Jack to see that version of her. We were stunned. Deception this deep wasn't just a lie, it was a foundation built on quicksand. Dad told her it wasn't fair to Jack, that he deserved to know the truth. But Sheila stood her ground. "He'll never find out," she insisted, as if saying it enough times would make it true. I didn't want any part of it. Let Mom and Dad handle her mess. I'd had enough. Months later, when Sheila called to share the big news of her engagement to Jack, I was caught off guard. They'd only been dating for a year, and I couldn't help but ask if she thought they might be rushing things. Sheila, however, burst into laughter, brushing off my concerns. "You wouldn't understand," she teased. "You haven't met the right guy yet." I couldn't argue with her, it was true. So, I pushed aside my doubts and congratulated her, hoping she'd found her happiness. Excitedly, Sheila went on to share her vision for an intimate wedding, filled with a close circle of loved ones. She had big plans and expectations, and I was front and center. She revealed that she wanted me to take charge of planning everything. Not as a bridesmaid. Not as her maid of honor. But as her wedding planner. I was taken aback and asked if this meant she didn't want me involved in the actual bridal party. Sheila casually mentioned that she'd already reserved those roles for her coworkers. "They're closer to me now," she explained without hesitation. I felt a pang of disappointment. It stung that she hadn't considered me for such an important part of her big day, but now she wanted me to handle the most stressful part? When I suggested that her coworkers might be better suited to help, given how well they knew her, she quickly shut that down. "They're all busy with work and families," she countered. "You're just a college student. You have time." Her manipulative tone wasn't new to me, and I almost laughed at how blatantly she was trying to guilt-trip me. Still, I stood my ground and politely declined. I explained how packed my schedule was with my final year of college and how I simply couldn't take on such a demanding role. Sheila didn't take it well. Her cheerful tone turned sour as she argued, insisting that as her sister, I had an obligation to help. She framed it as a family duty, and when that didn't work, she went straight to our parents, trying to pressure them into convincing me. Sheila complained that it was humiliating for her to handle these tasks herself, especially when other brides could count on their families. My parents tried to offer a compromise, suggesting she pay me for the work since wedding planning is no small feat, but Sheila flat out refused, claiming no sister would ever ask for money to help with simple tasks like planning a wedding. Her endless guilt-tripping didn't change my stance, and I stopped responding to her messages. Our parents eventually backed off too, realizing how unreasonable her demands were. Yet Sheila didn't relent. She bombarded me with more texts, calling me selfish and heartless for refusing to drop everything for her. So, Reddit, am I wrong for refusing her demands? If you had a sister like Sheila, would you help her plan her wedding despite her never lifting a finger for you in return? Update 1. When I first shared my story, I expected only a handful of comments agreeing with me, but the overwhelming support has left me speechless. Hundreds of people reached out to share their experiences with similarly toxic family members. For the first time, I feel validated. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in this. Many of you suggested I tell Jack the truth about Sheila's manipulative behavior to save him from a lifetime of misery. I agree. If I were in his shoes, I'd want to know. Sheila has even lied about important parts of her past, like forging a college degree. I'm planning to tell Jack the next time I see him, and I'll update you once I do. In the meantime, Sheila continues to bombard me with texts, demanding I take on her wedding planning. I've kept declining, offering instead to help with smaller, manageable tasks. Update 2. It's been a few weeks, and things have escalated. As many of you advised, I decided to inform Jack about Sheila's lies. Instead of reaching out on social media, I wrote him a detailed note. I planned to hand it to him during their engagement party. The party was a long 6-hour bus ride from my college town. When I finally arrived, tired and hungry, Sheila greeted me with nothing but complaints. She barely let me through the door before criticizing my late arrival and handing me a new task. Apparently, some servers hadn't shown up, and since I'd once offered to help with smaller tasks, she expected me to step in. Sheila's command was clear: serve drinks to all the guests, and she wasted no time in pushing me towards the back to join the servers. I barely had a chance to even gather myself, let alone greet my parents or relatives. The shock was unmistakable. I could feel the sting of the surprise, but I forced a smile to mask it, not wanting to burden my parents with my discomfort. They, of course, noticed. They watched in silence, their own brows furrowing as I was unexpectedly thrust into this task. It was strange, this turn of events. Sheila had no idea, but it gave me the perfect opening. She was busy, mingling with guests, not paying attention to me. I saw Jack standing alone, a moment of solitude amid the chaos, and I knew I had to act. As I handed him a drink, he looked at me with gratitude, commenting that I didn't have to be serving. And that was my cue. Without missing a beat, I slipped him the note. Quietly, I urged him to find a private moment and read it. This couldn't wait. Not even 15 minutes later, I saw him reappear from the bathroom, his face flushed with emotion. He walked straight up to Sheila, confronting her. "Have you been lying to me all along?" Jack's voice was steady, but there was an edge of disbelief in it. Sheila stared at him, confused, until the words hit her like a slap in the face. Jack pressed further. "You've never been to college?" The air thickened, tension mounting as Sheila's expression shifted. Her eyes widened in horror. The guests, our relatives, friends, looked on, mouths agape. Jack's words rang out. "How could you lie to me about something so huge? How could you lie about something like that, especially now, right after we got engaged?" He turned to our parents, asking for confirmation, and my father didn't hesitate. "Sheila never went to college," he declared. The room fell into stunned silence. Then Jack's voice broke the stillness, louder this time, as he confronted Sheila, asking how she could have lied to him about such an important detail. The guests exchanged awkward glances, some of them too stunned to speak. Others watched with a kind of morbid fascination. Sheila, standing there, visibly shaken, had no words. Jack's words cut through the air like a knife. "If you can lie to me about something this big, what else have you lied about?" His voice wavered, now filled with hurt and anger. "I don't even know what to believe anymore." What followed was pure chaos. The engagement party ended in an utter disaster. Sheila's face turned crimson as she stood before a room full of people, embarrassed and defeated. Her fiancé, broken and furious, left the party with his family, telling her he needed space. Sheila's life, in that moment, was shattered. The guests, sensing the tension, couldn't take their eyes off her. Even her co-workers, previously so eager to celebrate, filed out of the party quickly, leaving Sheila standing alone in the aftermath. Sheila has since suspected that someone in our family, maybe me, maybe a cousin, revealed the truth to Jack. But she has no proof, and thankfully, Jack has never pointed a finger at me. I had specifically asked him to keep my involvement a secret, and I'm relieved that he respected that. My parents, however, made it clear to Sheila that this was entirely her fault. They had urged her from the start to be honest with Jack, but she chose not to. It wasn't my responsibility to bear the consequences of her lies. I haven't heard from Sheila much since then. She hasn't asked for my help or support, but I don't expect her to. I'm just waiting to see how things unfold from here. Will she and Jack try to salvage their relationship after this? Or is it really over for good? I'll update you all once I know for sure. Well, as many of you predicted, the inevitable has happened. Jack called off the wedding. It was a brutal decision for both of them, but he had no choice. He even demanded the engagement ring back. That ring, a family heirloom passed down through generations, meant everything to him. And Sheila? She had to return it, along with his trust. Jack also told her to move out of their house, saying he could no longer live with someone who had lied to him about such a significant part of their life. He has refused to communicate with her ever since. As for the people who think I should come clean to Sheila, revealing my role and exposing the truth to Jack, let me be clear. I'm not going to confess. I did nothing wrong. I only revealed the truth, and Jack's choice to end the relationship was his, not mine. If I tell her now, all that anger and resentment will be redirected towards me, and I'm not about to invite more drama into my life. Sheila needs to learn that lying has consequences. Maybe, just maybe, this will teach her to be a better person. I hope it does.